Welcome to Friend of a Friend from Creative Pinellas, a new conversation series drawing connections between artists, inspirations, friends, and mentors, and showcasing the individuals that together make a creative community.
This program is brought to you by Creative Pinellas. Our mission is to facilitate a vibrant, integrative, collaborative, and sustainable Pinellas County arts community and arts and cultural destination. Creative Pinellas is funded in part by the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners, Visit St. Pete Clearwater, and the State of Florida Department of State Division of Cultural Affairs.
Tonight's conversation features artists Alison Tirrell and Nick Davis.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I'm muted.
Yes.
All right. So basically, we're excited to have you with us for episode 5 of Friend of a Friend. This is a very fun show. We have Alison Tirrell here as our host this evening. And so if you've never been with us, the basic concept of the show is that this month's guest becomes next month's host, and they will invite whoever they select to be their guest, whether it's a colleague, a mentor, a friend, but a creative person working in Pinellas County. And so with that, we'll have Nick at the end of tonight's episode. He'll announce who his guest will be next month. So we're really looking forward to that. But this month, like we mentioned, we have host Alison Tirrell, artist, and she'll be speaking with artist Nick Davis. Just to introduce Alison a bit, Alison Tirrell is an emerging artist, and she's a recent transplant here to St. Petersburg. Having lived in Brooklyn, New York for over a decade, she moved to Key West in 2017, where her work was selected to be part of the Studio Key West Small Works show. And she also co-founded the Key West Photography Festival. In October of 2019, she decided that St. Petersburg is where she wanted to be. And her work can be found in private collections around the globe and has been featured in Art Signal magazine, Voyage MIA online magazine, Pro de Artista, and has been included in several virtual group shows during the pandemic. And she holds a BA in art history from the Hunter College in New York City. So we're glad to have both of you with us tonight, and we'll turn it over to you, Alison.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, Nick.
Hey, how are you doing, Alison?
Good. I'm really happy that you agreed to be my guest for this month. I'm super psyched. So first, let me just read a quick bio about you. Nick Davis is an emerging digital artist from St. Petersburg, Florida. He is influenced by the work of Jean-Michel Basquiat, Kerry James Marshall, Kehinde Wiley, and Kara Walker, just to name a few. In the last 2 years, he has been selected as one of BET's Artists of the Week and was featured on WEDU's Arts Plus series. In addition, his Black is Beautiful collection was showcased at the Dunedin Fine Arts Center, where it was met with critical acclaim. He was also recently selected as one of the recipients of Creative Pinellas' Emerging Artist Grants for 2021. So that is super exciting. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, with me, with the whole Dunedin Fine Arts Center and emerging artists, it's just a whole new opportunity for me, and I'm excited for everything that's happening. It's been a busy year, so I'm excited for what 2021 holds for me and just see what's next for me.
Yeah, I'm excited for 2021 too, as I think we all are. How have you been dealing with everything that's been going on with 2020? Like, have you found that art making has become even more of kind of like a grounding practice for you this year?
I believe, yes, I believe in a sense. It has been keeping me grounded by keeping me focused. I have to stay positive during this time. I think this is a time for a lot of emotions and a lot of people to actually express who they are in this time. And I think this is the best time for art to be explored by anybody in a sense. And for me personally, it's just been, I want to say in a sense, it's keeping me sane during this time.
Right.
Focused.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I've never really thought of my art making as like an escape from anxiety or anything like that. And in fact, like a lot of times it just gives me more anxieties.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know this, and I'm sure most artists feel this way. Like when you're working on a piece and it's not going in the direction that you want, then you're like, I'm terrible, I'm the worst artist in the world. And then, a couple hours later, you bring it around. So it's not like the art making during this year isn't serving that purpose so much for me, but it's almost, like you said, I feel more focused.
Yes.
And I think that's part and parcel of being locked inside a lot of the time, right?
A lot of times. I think this year gave a lot of insight to purpose for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
It gave an insight to what your art actually means to you,
Mm-hmm.
and actually just what it means to everybody else.
Right.
So, like I said, with me, for my art, this has been an opening for emotions, for just childhood, just a lot of just life lessons. And I'm grateful for art, because without art, I don't know where I would be.
Right, exactly. I mean, this is something that I talked a little bit about last month with Jason Hackenworth, which is just, as artists, like, we have to make art.
Yes.
And so if we are unable to do it, we're kind of lost.
Pretty much. I
Yeah.
think this is a time for artists to have a new appreciation. I think artists open up a lot of emotions for the community. I've said it before several times, we live in the decades now where certain men can't wear certain colors, or certain people can't express certain emotions. And it's artist's duty to actually be that messenger for those. So we have to be that one to stand the ground and actually be willing to express it, despite how other people feel.
Right. And in your work, would you say it's fair to say that by you expressing certain things, and we'll get into the images in a few minutes, that by people seeing certain emotions expressed in your work, that the goal is kind of to let them know that it's okay for them to express the emotions?
Yes, that's my biggest goal with my art, just to let people know in itself that Black is beautiful.
Right.
Just to encourage that you're not alone in this journey.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest thing with my art is to let people know that we all face trials. Trials are inevitable, so we have to stand tall against them, and we have to conquer them, and we have to realize that everything happens for a reason.
So tell me a little bit about your background, just like how you got into art making, all of that.
I've always been interested in art. I come from a family full of painters, entertainers, and stuff like that. But I've always had something about recreating images. It always replayed in my mind. I've had cousins who always used to draw portraits, and I always wanted to be like them. And probably around, I want to say about 5 years ago, I started having seizures, which I was diagnosed with epilepsy. And then my wife, she bought me my first iPad, I want to say 2 years ago. And then ever since then, with me being unable to work, I'm forced to literally draw every single day. So I think without me drawing every single day, it would cause more depression, more anxiety.
Right.
I didn't have that outlet to express my feelings and stuff like that.
Right.
I would say I'm the kind of person who just watches a lot of art documentaries. I'm constantly researching different people and how they affected their community. Like Jean-Michel Basquiat, I look at him and it's not necessarily his paintings, it's just how he expresses his work.
Yeah.
And he gets to the point where he literally has to stop caring about what people are going to say. And that's what I think I had to do for myself. And to be honest with you, I think through artwork, I think it's helped my epilepsy, my emotions, and different things like that.
When you say that you had to kind of stop caring about what other people were saying about your work, what were some things that people were saying about your work that were giving you pause? Or
I think with the generation that we live in now, with a social media based generation, people's opinions are always in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
For me, I've been told my artwork is creepy. It's too black. What's wrong with it? I need to go back to just regular portraits. And I'm not, that wasn't for me. And I always feel like the more people try to pull you away from something, that's where your purpose is.
Right.
So, and I just try to stop focusing on what people have said. And thankfully, things have started to turn around for me.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're going where your gut is telling you where to go, because clearly it's incredibly impactful work. So Danny, if you can bring up image number 15 to start. Because so the one he's going to bring up, Nick, is the Statue of Liberty piece. And so when I was looking for someone to interview for this month's episode, I'm very new to this city, and I really, the majority of my time here has been pandemic time, so I really haven't had a chance to meet many people or anything. So I was just, on the internet, on Instagram, searching for St. Petersburg artists, and there are so many really great artists, as you know, in this city and in this whole county. But I think I was looking for somebody's work that kind of like punched me in the gut, like that really just was like, wow, stopped me in my tracks. And when I came upon your work, and this was the first image, it wasn't the first image that I saw, but it was the first image that I was like, this is the guy. Like, I have to, like, please let him say yes. And you did, obviously. But this image is so, first of all, it's incredibly timely, I feel, especially this year. But it feels like a punch in the gut. I'm not, like, I've looked at this image so many times, and I'm not sure exactly how to, like, read into it. So I'd like to hear you speak about this piece.
This is one of my favorite ones. It was Statue of a Tired State of Mind. And I think this is just represents pretty much everybody at this time. I think this has been a real struggle for a lot of people this year, with just maybe giving up at a point or just wondering what's next. And I think for people who are just dealing with what's going on now, we're at that pause. We're just tired of what's going on. We're waiting for change. And I think that's where this comes in, the tired state of mind. We're tired of being told change with no expectations.
Does the cigarette being unlit, like, is she about to light it? Did she already light it and it went out? Or like, what? I might be reading far too much into this, of course, but
she's getting ready to light it. It's almost like that lunch break. You have that coworker who goes on lunch and just smokes a cigarette, and it's just like she doesn't want to go back. She's pretty much just tired of what's going on, and she doesn't know if she should just quit and just start working from home.
Right. Exactly. So in a lot of your work, I've noticed that, and Danny, if you can kind of cycle through image number 1, 2, and 5 for this little chunk of conversation, I've noticed that you use a lot of specific, I'm going to call them symbols, because I can only assume that they are symbols, because you use them in a lot of different works. So you use things like halos, like in this piece right here. I've noticed paper airplanes are something that come up a lot. Balloons. Of course, you use the Basquiat crown in a lot, which is clearly a nod to Basquiat, which is fantastic. But, and also, kind of going along with the use of halos and just kind of like the general pictorial elements that you use, I feel like there's almost, well, clearly it has a religious connotation to it, but other ones are more subtly religious in their kind of symbology and things. So can you just speak about the use of these symbols and like what they mean to you and things like that?
Well, for me, I use a lot of birds and a lot of paper planes and sometimes balloons in my artwork. And for me, I think it's a big symbolization of limitations. For our community, we're so told on how far we can go, actually going past it. And I believe if we only go as far as we're told, we won't actually go as far as we're purposed to go.
Right.
And I think it's almost like, I've used this analogy before. It's almost like a track runner and a cheetah. Cheetah is told he's the fastest animal in the world, but in the track star, the track runner, he's just forced to keep running. He's only told how fast he's going. He's only told how far to go. But in a sense, the cheetah is just living off a primal attitude, meaning he's just keep on going. This is just the way of life. Meaning as long as we just keep reaching for the stars and just keep reaching, keep going, and just stop ignoring limitations and what we're told and how far we can go, the sky is the limit, in a sense.
Right. I read one interview with you where you were talking a little bit about, you talked about one of your kind of like your goals in life would be to open like an art program or an art school. Yes. For kids who don't have the opportunities that they should have. And then I think I also read something where you were talking about kind of like limitations that you had felt maybe as a younger man that had been placed upon you. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but if I'm remembering it, speak to it.
For me personally, I was that child who always wished he had a different family. Who always wished he had a different situation. And
who did or didn't wish?
Who did wish?
Who did wish? Oh, okay.
Always wished I was raised in a different situation. I had to learn, and I'm just not realizing, I had to appreciate what I had to go through to actually get to now. I had to appreciate my seizures. I had to appreciate being picked on as a child and stuff like that. Because I think without those trials and those different battles you face, there's no learning lessons.
Right.
And for me, going through those different battles, I gained a certain appreciation for life. And through that, my goal now is just to encourage my own community that in themselves they are beautiful. I came up with this quote when I first started this Black is series. Black is encouraging, Black is inspiring, Black is love. And right there, it just always stuck into me. And then it came Black is beautiful. And that's my biggest encouragement for the little girls and little boys today is that who you are, despite where you are now, doesn't change where you're going. I mean, it doesn't matter where you're gonna end up. Meaning that we all have to face battles. It's just if you're willing to learn from them or you're willing to grow from them.
And talking about what we were saying a couple of minutes ago about how, it's just basically representation is what I'm thinking about right now, and how I don't have data or statistics on this, but the number of Black artists in American museums is abysmal, right? Like it's like the number is so low. And looking at your work, I feel it's so much about representation of the Black community. And I mean, I can't imagine how a child would feel, you go into a museum and you just see nothing but white people. And, it's like museums are these hallowed places and revered and all of this. And then there's nobody that looks like you on the wall.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. So, okay, I'm going to jump into, I'm kind of just jumping around, which is fine. I wanted to talk about, and Danny, this is going to be images number 12, 1, and 2. And this is about the eyes, because of course we have to talk about the eyes in your work, because the eyes are such a huge part of why these images are so compelling. And what I find really interesting about your work is that the subject is a lot of the time looking at the viewer, or maybe their gaze is like slightly above like total eye contact, but it's basically eye contact. They're looking at the viewer. But if you look at different portraits throughout art history or whatever, when the sitter or the subject is looking at the viewer, it's often confrontational, or it might be a little bit flirty, or it might be something. But with yours, I find them to be very matter of fact. It's almost, there's no confrontational feeling. There's no, it's very matter of fact to me. It's kind of like, this is what I am, this is what this is. Talk about that a little bit.
I'd say for me personally, as a person, like I said, I deal with anxiety. I'm pretty much the biggest introvert you'll probably meet. For me,
I beg to differ on that, but anyway, we'll have a contest one day.
Ironically, it's funny that I'm probably the last person to look at anybody in their eyes. For me personally, it's hard for me to look at people in the eye. I'm always sitting by myself. It's anxious. So I think for the eyes for me here is that I'm standing tall. I'm coming against whatever's holding me back in a sense. And with the eyes, it gives me the chance to actually look at the person.
Right.
Because like I said, with me in person, you won't get that from me. I'm not the biggest person on eye contact, and I think this gives me the opportunity to express those.
And do you feel, in a sense, that your subjects are, you're allowing your subjects to do what you can't actually do in real life?
I would say in a sense, yes. For me personally, I always have anxiety. I'm always worried about what's next. I can be in the Walmart and just have anxiety in a sense. So this gives me the opportunity to express emotions. I can cry through my artwork. I can wear certain colors, or I can express a different emotion without having that fear of what people are going to say.
Right. Danny, if you can bring up images 7, 8, and 9. Another pictorial element that I've noticed that you use a lot are shadows. So either shadows or kind of shadowy figures in the background. And so a couple of things about these. Number one, I find the shadows to be very surrealist. And I'm going to ask you about that in a minute or two. But the shadows do feel to me a little bit looming, you know, like a little bit like threatening. So what are your thoughts about the shadows, and why do you put them in? What do they represent?
I would say the shadows for me are coming from a big inspiration of Tirrell Walker. Tirrell Walker, she's big on silhouettes, and I think through the silhouette, it gives you the opportunity to create your own story. So in a sense, with the people in the background, you don't know if they're happy or they're sad or what they're feeling in that day. And I believe that's a lot of emotions that we need to recognize in the people today. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know their trials. We don't know their stories. And if we're so quick to judge them on what's going or what's happening, we don't get to know who they are in a person.
Yeah, and I mean, that's certainly true. We were talking before the show started, we were just talking a little bit about social media. And so that's certainly true with all of the social media. Everyone's putting out a face or an image or whatever, and it may or may not have anything to do with their reality. This is another, wow. I mean, this piece is so incredible to me. First of all, the woman, her hair and her skin tone and the eyes and just everything is so beautiful and so moving. I feel like with a lot of your images, the viewer, at least for me, I can only speak for myself, obviously, but it's like I instantly can come up with an entire narrative about the person in the scene, what their life is like, what just happened, what's happening now. They're very, you're like a storyteller, but not in an obvious way, if that makes any sense at all. I just find that your images really instantly make my brain go into storytelling mode.
Thank you. And for me personally, this is actually one of my favorites because this is actually a portrait of Carol Walker and herself.
Oh, okay.
This is actually just to show what's going on. And like I said, my biggest goal for my artwork is so that people can relate to it. It's not necessarily, it's for my community, but I want it to be shown by everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want everybody to be able to relate to it.
Right.
So with this, is just, like I said, you have to create your own story for whatever's going on in my artwork. And that's my goal. So you can actually relate to it. It's just not a forced message.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's one of the really great things about your work is that there's definitely no forced message at all. They are very much open to interpretation. And it really is very much up to the viewer to come to their own conclusions about what the images are saying. I was looking at in my research, doing my research on you before this, I was watching one video interview, and one of the people speaking was talking about how they see a lot of joy in your work. Yeah. And I also see that, but I don't see it so much as joy as almost like hope. So like in the image that we were just looking at, the woman is in a very contemplative pose. You know, we don't know what's going on with her, but clearly she's deep in thought. But then in the background, there's either that's a bit of a halo behind her, or it's a sun, a setting sun, and then there's a balloon kind of, and then there's musical notes. So there's all of these elements of life going on around her. And there's like a guy jogging or something behind the fence. So there's all of this life and these little elements of hope while she is very deep in contemplation.
That's my biggest goal with a lot of my artwork, especially with this image. I tried to put growth into my artwork. So in this sense, you have her almost like a tree, a part of life. It's just all about growth and just where you're going. And then you have like the tree, I mean, the balloon hanging from the tree that you would usually see. It's a lot. I try to compare life and just the obstacles of what you would face in my artwork.
Mm-hmm. Since this one has musical notes, I'm gonna, Danny, ask you to bring up image number 3, which is the Marvin Gaye piece. And so this image is clearly from the What's Going On era. It's like a picture from the early 70s. And just as a side note, What's Going On, that record is like in my top 20 of all time. And I'm like, when I put that record on, I am singing my heart out from the first note to the end, and people are like, okay, that's your problem. But so and clearly that I'm obviously you're familiar with the record too. And you know, that album, you know, when I saw this image, I was just thinking about how that album never gets old. It's always kind of contemporary, but it's like especially relevant right now. Like all the themes of that album are like really relevant right now. And so I wanted to ask you if music in general, because so there's this one, there's the musical notes. There's another one that kind of looks like Notorious B.I.G., but I'm not sure if it's supposed to be him.
Probably, he's a local rapper, probably.
Okay. But I wanted to ask if music plays a part in your process at all. Like even just like, do you listen to music when you're drawing or?
Oh, I'm constantly listening to music. I would say for every different piece, it's a different genre of music. Mm-hmm. I listen to from jazz to hip hop to gospel music to anything. It's really just all about what really affects me.
Right.
I would say it starts off with the song, and then it just goes into a whole nother process. And then somehow I just find a quote that somehow strangely just relates to it. And it's all about the process. But music plays a big process in all of this for me.
Right. So in this image, Marvin is crying, and tears are something that appear in several of your works, at least the ones that I've seen.
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit.
For this image in itself, it's just a representation of fathers, in a sense. It's not necessarily seen a lot in our community. So you see the mother with her child without the father. But in a sense, a lot of men in our community, it's not necessarily that they're bad people. It's just they're not ready to be fathers, in a sense. And if we can work together and just actually realize that we have emotions and that we are affected, we could actually change what's going on if we just actually recreate love. But for me personally, the tears, like I said, emotions are a big thing for me. There's always times where I believe crying is the only thing you could say. There's days where I just randomly cry for no reason, and it can be nothing wrong. It's just, it needs to come out.
Right.
I think if we don't have that outlet as young men or even older people, it's just, we just keep playing the same cycles in a sense.
Right. Right. And again, seeing an image like this as a young man, I'm not saying I'm a young man, but I'm saying if one was a young man, it's impactful, right?
Yes, that's my biggest goal for the, I to be honest with you, as a child, we always grow up around the older people who are coming from an older generation. So they're not caught up on what's happening now. And I believe we have to, in order to change things, we have to be willing to take that step. And that's my biggest goal for me. And like I said, I had to stop caring about what people would say so I can be that change for the generation.
Right. I mean, again, going back to people giving you negative or just not useful comments about your work. People who would say your work is too Black.
Yes.
How do you even respond to that? I mean, to me, it's like somebody saying to me, my work is too white. What does that even mean? Like, I mean, I know what it means,
Yeah.
but speak to that.
For me personally, it's when people say, why is my pictures too Black? I said, my reply usually is it not Black enough, to be honest with you. And not to say that it's just a racial aspect, because Black people have told me, my own people have told me that my artwork is too Black in a sense.
When they say that, do they mean like skin color it's too Black? Or just an overall feeling it's too Black?
Overall feeling my artwork is in a sense just creepy. It's scary.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of times where it's just all about people's perspective. Some people, and it lets you know what people are focused on. Some people see the color of the skin, some see the emotion, some see the story. So you can't judge people on what they see, on their perspectives. You just have to be willing to understand it, forgive, and love.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, the fact of the matter is that artwork is so completely subjective anyway that you're never going to please anyone. That's for sure. But I think a lot of people also, I guess maybe people who aren't artists or people who don't have a good grasp of art history kind of want art to be certain things, that they want it to be pretty, or they want it to be happy, or they want it to be something they can hang over their couch kind of thing. And so if the work has more depth, which yours really does, and it might make the viewer a little bit uncomfortable with that gaze, or with what's going on in the background or what have you, then it won't be pleasing for them. But that's okay.
Pretty much, and that's my biggest thing. Like I said, one of my biggest inspirations are Kerry James Marshall. And one of my favorite quotes from him is, "Why do I paint Black people?" And his simple answer is, because I am Black.
Exactly.
And there's not much of a other story somebody else I can say.
Right.
Starting with my own story in itself.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, a question like that, it sort of encapsulates the whole problem, right? Like, why should that question ever even be asked? It's like the answer is so obvious, and yet, yeah. So another thing I wanted to talk about, and this relates to Kerry James Marshall actually, and Danny, if you can bring up image number 13 and number 11. His imagery depicts a lot of everyday scenes, and you also have incorporated that in your own work. So for example, here's a young girl getting a snow cone, and yet it's not, if I describe it, it's a simple scene, right? It's a girl getting a snow cone.
Exactly.
And yet there's so much mystery here and so much story that I want to know more about just from this very simple image. There's no background here. Here's another example too of how I think your work is very surreal. So here, all we have is the shadow, the main figure, and an arm. We don't get to see who is attached to that arm, what their motives are, what their facial expression is. Again, the main focus here, she has a very kind of matter-of-fact expression on her face. So it's kind of up to the viewer to figure out what the story is here. And so, yeah, Kerry James Marshall, who, you know, you mentioned is a huge influence on you. He also does a lot of these very everyday scenes. Danny, if you could bring up the other one, it's either 13 or 11. Just as another, oh yeah, this one. So again, here's another seemingly very everyday scene. And yet clearly this one is elevated to a much higher thing. He's got the halo, the halo motif going on behind him. And then his eyes have a swath or wash of blue skies. Yes. So talk about that one.
For me personally, with all my artwork, it's simple. It's just everyday scenes of the community. Similar to this one, this is just a barbershop. We have used to Saturdays, waking up early in the morning and just heading to the barbershop and being there for hours while your brothers get their haircuts and stuff like that. And similar to the one with the snow cone, that's just an everyday thing for our community. And right. That's my biggest thing with my art. I want to represent my community before I represent the world.
Right.
I want to shine the light on that we are all the same. We are all facing the different trials. And I think this is the biggest representation. For this barbershop picture, it was all about vision. It's not about where you start, it's about where you're going.
Right. And the other thing about everyday scenes is that even though your focus in terms of who your viewers are is the Black community, everyday scenes relate to every person on the earth, right? Like everybody gets a haircut, everybody buys a snow cone. I mean, I love snow cones. So they're really very universal images to me. And again, just looking at this image, as the viewer, I can't help but, what is this boy thinking about? What, where is he going after this? What's his life like? It's just, your figures really make the viewer want to know more. But again, it's up to them to create whatever narrative it is that they want to create.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think a lot of times for my artworks, they're just, in a sense, self-portraits of myself. Like in a sense, I say what I did with the seizures and epilepsy and stuff like that. And for me personally, I don't know what's next for me. Every day is new for me. For a person who has the seizures in his sleep, you don't know if you're going to see tomorrow. So every day is a blessing. So I try to take full advantage of that. If I have the opportunity to express a message to the community, that's my goal for every day.
Right. Let's talk about digital art in general right now. I think we were off camera when you said this, but so I'll just ask you to repeat, and I'm not even sure if I heard you correctly, but I think you said that you're not interested in ever doing physical paint.
It's I play with it. I have played with it. You can see I've have played with it one time, but it's not something I usually try to stick to.
Mhm.
For a person, I don't like getting my hands messy. And with my iPad, it gives me the opportunity to take it everywhere I go. Um,
Right.
I'm sitting in the back of church drawing sometimes, sitting in the back seat of a car drawing. It's like a studio on the go in a sense.
Mm.
And I honestly believe digital art will be the next step for a lot of people. It will help a lot of people with emotions, just expression, and just getting that outlet of community. I mean, emotions without actually having to pick up a brush, set up your painting scene and stuff like that. You can just pick up that Apple Pencil or whatever stylus and just get to drawing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that makes a really good point because I think that art making can be very intimidating to people, and especially if they don't have great technical chops to begin with. Like you have really good, obviously you have good technical chops, but it's like there's this huge barrier to making art. You have to know how to use the paints and how to mix them and blah blah blah, all this stuff, right? But if you're working digitally, I mean, obviously there's a huge learning curve with that too. Like, yeah. Again, I was watching one video with you where you're drawing and then you're moving all these things around and then you're resizing and then you're shading. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, really, I was like, this is super intimidating. But after you get over that learning curve, yeah, I could see how that would be extremely attractive as the medium that you would use.
And I think we're going through that time where we're trying to redefine what art is.
Right.
Worldwide, in a sense, not necessarily just a community. We're just trying to redefine what it is for us in general.
Yeah, and it's funny about digital art because I do still feel there's definitely a bias against it. But if you look through art history, when photography first came into existence, it was completely looked down on for the same reasons, right? This isn't art, you're just snapping a picture. Anybody could snap a picture. And it's like, well, yeah, anyone can snap a picture, but very few people can take a picture that is going to be X, Y, and Z, right? So I think that with digital art, it's going to be like that. It's just going to be a matter of time, and people need to get used to like their old ways of thinking. They need to kind of push those aside and get used to.
And I think we're willing to learn more about it because I believe digital art it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
If you look at Andy Warhol with his,
I was just gonna say Warhol. Yeah.
To be honest with you, he started it for me in a sense.
Right.
With multiple colors, he took that chance, and
Right.
I think that's where digital art actually got that little meaning of fine art, possibly.
Right.
It had a possibility that it could be in museums in a sense.
Yep.
And I think we're just getting to that point where we have to take charge of what digital art is now and redefine it.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I think, you're one of those people that actually is redefining it like right now. So the pressure's on, Nick, the pressure is on, but I'm confident that you can handle it. But yeah, sometimes I like to think about what Warhol would be doing today, and totally he'd be doing all kinds of crazy stuff digitally.
But I think we needed Warhol to start it off with those different colors and taking
Absolutely.
Like you say, with the photography, you have to combine all that different stuff, and it led to Photoshop, and it led to different other stuff, and now we're drawing on the iPads.
Right.
It's like everything had to work accordingly.
Exactly. After you finish a piece, because again, this is going back to one of the interviews that I watched with you, I think you had mentioned something about, the lack of physicality with digital art. So you can't touch it, right? So when you finish a piece, do you immediately print it out so that you can kind of touch it, or?
Well, for me personally, like I say, I draw every single day. So my iPad is literally filled with about 500, 600 drawings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And literally, after I finish a painting, I usually go and look for quotes. I look for the quotes, and I always try to find a good Black quote that accommodates what I actually see in the image.
Mhm.
A lot of quotes I use are Maya Angelou's, Toni Morrison, and I love Maya Angelou. And one of her favorite ones I use are like, "We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes that it goes through." And I try to accommodate that in all of my artwork and stuff like that. So I try to, like you said, I try to make that story and just try to let people know that the celebrities of today or the celebrities of the past, we all battle the same things and we all deal with the same struggles.
Yeah. Um, do you ever work the opposite way? Do you ever read a quote and then make a work off of that quote?
Not usually, no,
No.
never so. Because to be honest with you, um, it's only funny that I usually find a quote afterwards that actually suits that artwork. I never really have a certain person in mind or a certain quote. It just lets me know that we all battle the same differences.
Right. As the last topic, because we have like 9 minutes left, let's talk about social media a little bit, and Instagram specifically, because there are so many. So I sell my work directly from Instagram.
Okay.
And I assume you do. Well, you have a website too. I've been working on my website for like a year now, and I still haven't gotten it up and running, but that's a whole other ball of wax. But basically, you have an incredibly high number of followers. I think you have like over 10,000 followers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, wow. Like, hello.
Yeah, like I said, I started this back in last year of 2019, and I had no idea it was going to be this. I just reached 20,000 followers this week.
Oh my God, I wasn't even close to your number. Oh my God, I really bow down to you.
No, not at all. But it lets you know that what you think is good to everybody else, people have a different perspective. Because to be honest with you, I don't necessarily always see what people see in my artwork. And it's just like, I started this off with 700 followers. I would draw portraits of simple celebrities. I would just draw different portraits and different stuff. And I always felt like there was an emptiness with drawing portraits of different celebrities. I feel like it's almost, I was wasting a gift or something, instead of actually just exploring the different opportunities. And then one day I was asked to do a painting in church, and after that it led it to first day of school, and something just told me to keep going. And literally my goal for this year was just to have, I want to say, about 5,000 followers, and somehow God allowed me to have 20,000. So I'm only excited for what's for 2021 and what's next for me.
The question that I was going to ask just completely flew out of my head. It related to something that you just said. Oh, I know what it was. So when you had originally started doing these portraits of celebrities, were you at that point, were you already familiar with the works of like Kerry James Marshall, et cetera? Or did your knowledge of these artists come like as you were doing these celebrity portraits and after it?
Well, to be honest with you, I've always, I would say I've recently, within the last year and a half, I learned about Basquiat. I've always been encouraged by Kehinde Wiley, Kerry James Marshall, in a sense. I would say it's been a long journey for me with just relating to different artists and stuff like that. I've dealt with addiction, I've dealt with depression, I've dealt with all these different battles. And it's just, with me learning more about them, it allowed me to, like I said earlier, stop caring. And I had to do what's best for the community. I had to do what's best for the people around me. So I had to stop that lifestyle. I had to stop being depressed. I believe in order to be the change, you have to be the change that you want to see.
Right.
So we have to challenge those. And I think with me learning more about them, it gave me the courage to take this step.
When you first saw, I know I'm sticking with Kerry James Marshall, but his work is so exemplary. When you first encountered his work, would you say that you had sort of like, I don't want to say like aha moment, but like, because there's certain artists who I first came in contact with in my 20s, and it was like, this is the person. Like, this is the person that's speaking to me. Was it kind of like that when you first encountered his work?
A lot of stuff. Kerry James Marshall is, I have to be honest with you, I see a lot of myself in Kerry James Marshall, and I love his work. It's a big inspiration for my work. It just gives you that courage that you, like I said earlier, your Black is beautiful. Your Black is enough. You are enough who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Who you are doesn't depict where you're going. So we have to just keep focused on our abilities and our gifts and just focus on our purpose.
Definitely. And finally, I just want to ask you how psyched you are about being an emerging artist grant recipient. Like, what are you like? Because it's a whole many months long process. And how do you feel about that? It seems really exciting.
I'm extremely grateful. To be honest with you, I was surprised.
I'm not surprised at all.
I didn't expect it. Like I said, I don't usually see what other people see in me, so I'm always the first to down myself. So I'm extremely grateful for what's next, and it's going to be a great opportunity for me, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I'm extremely grateful that A, you said yes to this, and B, that I have gotten to know your work. Honestly, I am a huge fan now, because I didn't know who you were before. And yeah, your work is just incredibly impactful, and I can't wait to see where your career goes, because I have a feeling it's going places. So thank you. So let's have you tell us who you're going to interview next month.
Well, next month, he's a great artist. His name is Jabari Reed, AKA iBombs. He's just a talented artist. You can see a lot of his murals and paintings and stuff around the city. And he's an expression for the newer generation. For me, I'm already about to hit 30. So it's already anticipated. It's scary. So, but I think for him, as a younger generation, 20, 23, and it's just like, he's needed. He's needed for expression at this time.
Cool. Does he have an Instagram handle that people can follow?
Yes, it's iBombs. It's I.B.O.M.S.
Cool. Excellent. Okay, Danny, I think you can pop back on. If he's there. He's there.
All right. I'll post one on Facebook while you guys are all doing it. It was a lot of fun. It was great fun listening to you guys. Fascinating conversation. It was cool to see you guys get to know each other too over the course of the episode. So we're really looking forward to next month. I'm really excited to hear about interviewing Jabari next month. That's going to be another great episode.